in the heart of the Wild West, where the land runs dry and justice rides on a man's soul. One secret tore two brothers apart. When a broken woman stumbled through a ranch door whispering, "My brother." He defiled me. The night changed forever. What followed wasn't law, it wasn't mercy. It was vengeance. And before sunrise, the plains would remember a man who buried his blood meant to save her name. This is the story of Eli Carson, the rancher who did the unthinkable. The wind screamed across the open plains, carrying dust and the faint smell of rain. Inside the old Carson ranch house, the single lantern on the table flickered, throwing long shadows against the log walls. Eli Carson sat in silence, his rough hands wrapped around a half-empty bottle of whiskey. The day had been long, the cattle restless, and his mind even more so. The creak of the front door startled him. It wasn't the kind of hour for visitors. The door swung open slowly. Standing in the doorway was Clara, her face pale, her hair tangled, her dress torn at the shoulder and smeared with dirt. Her eyes, wide and broken, searched the room before locking on him. She stumbled inside, clutching her shawl around herself as though it could still protect her. "Clara?" Eli rose from his chair, his voice rough but gentle. "What in God's name happened to you?" She didn't answer right away. Her lips trembled, her breath shaky. He stepped forward and caught her just before she fell, guiding her into the chair he'd just left. Her hands shook as she tried to speak, but no sound came out. Eli poured a glass of water and held it out. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely more than a whisper. "My brother. He defiled me." The words didn't make sense at first. They hung in the air, twisting, echoing. Eli blinked, thinking he must have misheard. "What did you just say?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Nathan. My own brother, he—" She couldn't finish. Her face collapsed into her hands as sobs racked her body. Eli felt the air leave his lungs. His jaw tightened, every muscle in his body turning to stone. Nathan, the man he'd grown up with, the man who once saved his life in a gunfight, had done this. He turned away, pacing the floor, running his fingers through his hair. The whiskey glass trembled in his hand before shattering against the floorboards. "You're sure?" he whispered hoarsely, his voice breaking. Clara nodded without looking up. "He said no one would believe me." "He said you wouldn't." Eli's chest ached as if someone had pressed a brand against his heart. He knelt down in front of her, lifting her chin gently. "You got my word, Clara, I believe you." The clock ticked on the mantel, its slow rhythm filling the silence. The wind outside grew stronger, rattling the windows. Eli rose slowly, his expression unreadable, his hands shaking not from fear, but from something deeper, colder. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. The night had gone still, the kind of stillness that only came before a storm. Eli stepped out of the cabin and felt the cool air hit his skin. The porch creaked beneath his boots as he stood there for a long moment, staring out across the wide, empty land. The moon hung low, silver light spilling over the plains, turning everything ghostly pale. Behind him, the faint sound of footsteps broke the silence. Clara stood in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, her face still streaked with tears. "Eli," she said softly, "where are you going?" He didn't turn around. His voice was low, almost hollow. "You already know." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Don't do this, please. You can't undo what's been done." "Killing him won't—" Eli cut her off with a quiet but sharp tone. "Some things ain't meant to be forgiven." He looked at her then, his eyes dark under the brim of his hat. "He took something from you that no man should ever take. And I can't breathe knowing he's out there, drinking, laughing like nothing happened." He turned back, tightening the saddle on his horse. Each motion was slow, deliberate, a man preparing himself not for a ride but for judgment. Clara's tears fell harder now. "You'll ruin yourself," she whispered. "You'll be no better than him." Eli paused, his hand resting on the saddle horn. "Maybe," he said quietly, "but at least you'll be safe." He swung himself up onto the horse, the leather creaking beneath him. For a second he looked down at her, the lantern light flickering across his weathered face. "Lock the door," he said, "and don't wait up." Then he rode off into the darkness, the rhythmic pounding of hooves echoing across the empty land. The road to the Carson homestead was long, winding through the fields and low hills. Every turn brought back memories, of Nathan laughing beside him, of the nights they'd ridden together, of promises made long ago. But those memories felt poisoned now, each one twisting like a knife in his chest. When the farmhouse came into view, Eli slowed his horse and dismounted. A faint orange glow flickered from the barn. Laughter? loud and drunken, drifted into the night. Nathan was inside drinking with 2 men from town. Eli's boots crunched against the dirt as he walked forward. The laughter stopped when he stepped into the doorway. Nathan looked up, bleary-eyed but smirking. "Eli, what brings you out this late? Come to drink or come to judge?" Eli said nothing. The wind pushed through the open doors, stirring the hay. Nathan chuckled darkly. "You look like hell, old friend. What's the matter? Did my sister tell you one of her stories?" Eli's hand hovered near his revolver, his jaw locked tight. "You should watch your mouth, Nathan." Nathan's grin faded, but he tried to stand tall, the liquor still thick in his voice. "You ain't gonna do nothing. You never had the guts." The world seemed to slow. The lantern flame flickered. Then came the sound, sharp, final, one shot. Nathan staggered backward, disbelief frozen on his face before he fell into the straw. The other men stumbled away, shouting, running into the night. Eli stood over the body, the gun still warm in his hand. He didn't blink, didn't speak. Only the sound of the wind filled the silence, and somewhere, a dog barked in the distance. Eli holstered the gun and turned toward the open door. The sky was breaking into gray, the first light of dawn creeping over the plains. He whispered under his breath, voice hoarse and heavy. "It's done." The first light of dawn crawled across the horizon, bleeding soft gold into the gray sky. The world was silent except for the wind sighing through the dry grass. Eli stood on the small ridge behind the ranch, his hands buried deep in the earth. The shovel's handle creaked as he lifted another mound of dirt and let it fall. Each thud dull and final. The grave wasn't deep, but it was enough. Nathan's body lay still beneath the coarse blanket Eli had thrown over him, the same blanket they'd once shared on long cattle drives. The irony burned in Eli's chest. Every shovel of dirt felt like burying a part of himself. The man he used to be before the night turned him into something else. His arms ached, his shirt clung to his back. But he didn't stop until the mound was level. He pressed the shovel into the ground, leaning on it for a long while. His breath came slow, uneven. The rising sun painted the land in colors too beautiful for the ugliness that had just happened. Behind him, the sound of footsteps broke the silence. Clara approached slowly, her blanket still wrapped around her, eyes wide and hollow. She stopped a few feet away, her voice barely audible. You really did it." Eli didn't turn right away. He stared at the grave, at the patch of disturbed soil that marked the end of everything between him and Nathan. Finally he spoke, quiet, steady, but with a weight that shook her. "It's done." She took a hesitant step closer, her voice trembling. "You did it for me?" He turned to face her. His eyes were red-rimmed, shadowed with exhaustion and something darker. "Guilt, maybe, or the faint ghost of relief. For you," he said softly. "And for what's right. Ain't no court here that'd make him pay? Not out in this land." Her lip quivered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "And what about you, Eli? Who's gonna save you from what you've done?" He looked past her, out to the open plains stretching endless and empty. "Don't reckon anyone can." The wind picked up, scattering dust across the fresh grave. A hawk cried out somewhere far above, circling in the pale light. Eli took off his hat and held it to his chest. For a long moment neither of them spoke. The only sound was the whisper of the wind through the grass, carrying away the last traces of gunpowder and sin. Finally, Eli turned back toward the ranch. "You should rest," he murmured. Ain't nothing left for him but the dirt. Clara hesitated, then followed him. Her steps were small, unsure, but she walked beside him anyway. The 2 figures, one broken, one burdened, moved together toward the distant ranch house. As they reached the porch, the rising sun caught Eli's face. It wasn't the face of a hero or a villain, just a man who had done what he thought justice demanded, and lost himself in the process. He paused before stepping inside, his hand resting on the doorframe. "This land remembers," he said quietly, almost to himself. "It always does." And as the wind swept across the plains, the ranch stood silent and a lonely monument to love, revenge, and the price of both.